podcast. Okay, I've got it. I've got her.
Ready?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
excited. Hi, Cara.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It is glorious today. I'm ready, full of enthusiasm, ready to go. How about you?
Amazing. I'm good. I'm slightly dry-mouthed from too much Prosecco last night.
Ooh.
So we'll just have to see how this rolls.
You're paying the price. Have you got a drink? Are you hydrating?
I've got lots of water by me. It was just one of those times where they were topping you up and I couldn't say no. And it's my own silly fault. It's my own silly fault.
I mean, you're only human. When they come round with the bottle, what are you supposed to do?
And you're like mid-sentence and but then, don't succumb to peer pressure. That's what we were told at school. So not doing very well there.
Yeah, what do they know? We were told loads of stuff at school. Of course, if you were my child, I would be saying something entirely different. But yeah.
100%. But nevertheless, we've got a lovely story. So welcome to She Changed History, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, we hit 1,000 downloads. Did I tell you?
Marvelous news. That's so I can't even begin to say how excited I am. And
we're very grateful.
Well done.
So I've got a little story for you today. It's someone you probably know, right? But I want to do the story, and it's because you probably know her for something that isn't true. We're just gonna myth bust this lady out. Does that sound good?
Yeah, so it's like someone we think we know, but we don't.
Yeah.
Okay, bring it on.
So we're gonna be talking about Catherine the Great, and crucially her mother. That's the other thing. So 2 for 1. Got a little intro. Forget the whispers and the wild rumours. The real story of Catherine the Great. It's a gripping tale of ambition, intellect, and a relentless drive to drag Russia from the medieval ages into the Enlightenment. More than just a scandalous headline, she was a shrewd political operator, a champion of education and the arts, and an empire builder who left an indelible mark on history. Prepare to discover the fascinating truth behind Catherine the Great. So there we go. What do you know about Catherine the Great? When I say Catherine the Great, you say it.
Giddy up. That's what I say. Yeah. We like what we like, but that's not cool. So please dispel that rumor.
Yes. Fear not. We're going to dispel that one in particular. And we're going to add lots of layers to that about all the cool stuff that she actually did. So the sources today are mainly an article by worldhistory.org. I rely heavily on that, which is written by Liana Miate, a BBC article on the history figure section, Britannica, Smithsonian Magazine, The True Story of Catherine the Great, a medium.com blog, historythings.com, and there was a little course on Catherine the Great on Lumen Learning, and I took a little bit of the course.
Oh my God, how cool is that? I love this. Did you get like a certificate at the end?
Gold style, yeah.
Well done, you. Outstanding.
So, Catherine the Great was born Sophie Friedrich Augustus von Anhalt-Zerbst on the 2nd of May, 1729 in Stettin, it was then part of Prussia, which is now in Poland. Her dad was a minor prince, a little bit like Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie if they had children. So very minor, very distant royal kind of thing.
So in that sphere, but not really expected to be in power.
Not in the nuclear cell, not in that bit, on the edges a little bit. She was related through her mother to the Dukes of Holstein, which is in Germany. So her family is noble. Even though they are noble, it's not like they're rolling in money. One of her younger brothers, Wilhelm Christian, died at 12 from scarlet fever. And because of that, Catherine is said to have quite a close relationship with her father and her mother. So they're quite a little close-knit. They're just trying their best. She did have a governess, which is very privileged. It's very nice to have. Her name was Elizabeth, but they called her Babette. And she was like a great influence on Catherine growing up. And a word is said about Babette throughout history. She was the kind of governess that every child would wish to have. I guess a little bit Mary Poppins-y, I guess. Kind of vibe. So Catherine was a very happy child. She played games and she was quite naturally quite ballsy, I think, in the games, and
Okay.
she kind of organised all the other brothers and sisters. Catherine herself described her childhood as uneventful. She said there's nothing of interest in it. When she comes of age, when I say come of age, I mean 10 to 12. Like back in the day,
Whoa.
coming of
Wow.
age back in the day, where you were married off very, very young.
I'm thinking 1730s.
Mhm.
Lifespan is probably
Very
like
short.
35, 40. I guess they're thinking no time to waste.
I think so.
Let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, and her mother was called Joanna, and she was basically not satisfied. She regretted marrying a man who she didn't think was good enough for her, and there was a lot of resentment there. And she was like, I'm not having this for my children. Joanna was on a mission. She was like, I'm not letting these children be like me, which is a very parent thing to do. So Joanna is hell-bent on securing Catherine a well-connected husband, right? That's her one goal. Ideally, because we're on the outskirts of royal, ideally she wants a prince, right?
Climb that ladder.
Gotta get there, gotta get there. So in 1839, 10-year-old Catherine meets 11-year-old Peter, who is the Duke of Holstein, and he is heir to the throne of Sweden, and he's the only living grandson of Peter the Great of Russia. So tiny Peter, well connected.
Right.
Yeah. For 11-year-old, that's a very good network.
Rocking quite a good CV. His LinkedIn is impressive for an 11-year-old.
So he was considered a very good match for Catherine and Joanna. And Joanna was like, yes, feeling this. This is it. Now, Joanna is like the secret hero of this story, I think, because she's giving me Kris Jenner vibes. She's giving me momager. She's giving me, you will go to every beauty pageant. You will do absolutely everything to climb these ladders and be relevant. And there is an essence of meddling, and I don't think it's healthy, but we cannot underestimate Joanna's ambition and her sheer relentlessness. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying she was relentless, and I like that.
It came from a place of love, didn't it? She wanted better, like you said, she wanted better for her kids than she herself felt she had. But yeah, that would be relentless and tedious. And like, oh, are you really wearing that corset? I mean, oh God, come on, Mom. Back
the
off.
pressure must be high, right?
Yeah.
She is the queen of meddling. So she had connections with the Russian Empress, who is very interconnected. So who was Joanna's cousin, but also Tiny Peter's dad.
Wow.
Was married. So Tiny Peter's dad was married to the Empress's older sister, right?
So this is like everybody knows everybody, probably related in some tangential way. Like they're all a big cluster.
So related of sorts, basically, yeah. And the Empress had once been betrothed to Joanna's older brother. So there's even history there. There's a little bit of history. They know each other. The Empress was betrothed to Joanna's brother, but he died. So there's a little bit of heartbreak there. There's a little bit of trauma bonding, I imagine.
The one that got away through death. Yeah.
So Joanna, the mum, she encourages this relationship with the Empress, who's connected to Peter, by organising gifts. And making sure that Catherine is in the right spaces and goes to the right parties and all this.
Fancy meeting you here. Like that. I happen to have brought you a giraffe. Yeah.
Basically all that.
Oh, those royals.
And it takes years. So like I said, Joanna is relentless. She starts when Catherine's like 10. She really goes heavy on it. But it does work. So in January...
Pageant mom. No,
I know.
Pay off, but it does.
It does. It really does. So in January 1742, so this is like 10 years or so of meddling, the Empress names Peter, little Peter. Of all the people she could have chosen, just happens to choose Peter as the heir to the throne.
Okay.
Just casually, because of all this like little mind games that Joanna's playing in the background. And then in 1744, Joanna and Catherine are invited to go to Russia by King Friedrich II of Prussia, who expresses his wishes for Catherine to become the wife of Peter. So it's very complicated, but she's in, basically. Bottom line is Catherine's got him. So on the 10th of January 1744, Catherine makes her way for I guess it's like the formal approval of the match. So she arrives in Russia. It goes well. She's assumed the title of Grand Duchess Catherine Aklazovenia and marries Peter the following year. So really quick, really bish bash bosh, it's happened, right?
Yeah, done deal. Let's get it.
Joanna's sat there with her Prosecco. She's having a little well done me moment in the background.
Here's to 10 years of meddling.
Well done me. My future is secure. But sadly, though, Peter wasn't really into Catherine. He wasn't that bothered, to be honest.
Oh,
maybe because he's still a boy.
He's 11 years old. He's probably into, like, I don't know what, like little
toy
horses or whatever. Toy soldiers. Man.
He's a little bit older now, but he's still not that. He's still not that bothered.
He's not feeling it.
No. And also, now we're in Russia. Catherine doesn't know anything about its culture, anything about its language, anything about its customs. And that, I imagine, is very, very lonely. And now she's got this little kid who she's like, oh, not even that bothered by you anyway, and he's not that bothered with me. That's such a difficult situation for a young woman to be in, right? But she takes it by the horns and she goes full on, I'm in Russia now, I'm going to do it their way. So she learns Russian, she learns the custom, she takes it very seriously. She also enters the Russian Orthodox Church, which, you know, not easy to get into, she has to. And she takes it so seriously that she actually becomes ill from all the pressure and all the how tiresome it is. And she actually becomes ill with pneumonia. So she's trying really hard. I guess also, if I was in this situation and you've got this kid who you're like, ugh, you're going to try and find your own thing, aren't you? You're going to try and find your own path and make the best of a bad situation and focus on your own lane, I think, as well. So I think that's what she was doing.
That makes sense. And I think it also would be an answer to some of the vulnerability you would feel, because you might be thinking, Peter could just give me the flick at any point, and then who am I? Because I'm only here under his purview. And like, if he's not into me, what then? So yeah, good for her.
Hold that thought. That is a really, great insight. So the marriage, it turns out a wedding is 10 days in Russia, just a 10-day ceremony.
Oh, that's too many days.
Sorry.
No.
What's this? So they had 10 days of celebrating, and then the actual marriage bit, the thing after the 10 days, was awful. It was deemed a complete failure. They ended up staying married, I think, for about 18 years, but it wasn't great for Catherine. She was very disappointed. Peter was he's the bad guy of the story. He was physically and emotionally underdeveloped, which meant that those relationships didn't come very easily. And in a modern day context, you would think, oh, maybe that's autism, or maybe that's ADHD, maybe there's something going on there. But obviously in the 1700s, we didn't have this language, we didn't have this context or research to back that up. And he is remembered as being very immature. He just wanted to play with his toys all the time. He didn't want, he wasn't interested in relationships or people. They didn't consummate the marriage for a really long time. Yeah.
I bet. I mean,
he's pictured Peter throughout history as being just this petulant child, like throwing his toys out the pram, spoiled, can't communicate, just, it's my way or the highway, very immature. But it's really important to note that most of what we know about Peter comes from Catherine, so it's very one-sided, I'd say.
Oh my god. Okay. So right, I do not doubt for a minute that there is historical accuracy here, because it's obviously so well supported by the research you've done, but nobody should be solely subject to history remembering them in the words of their worst ex, like the person who was the most hurt or disappointed by them. That is dreadful. Yeah, that's rough. That's pretty rough.
So she described him as many things, including extremely neurotic, rebellious, obstinate, perhaps impotent, and nearly an alcoholic. And this is after years of trying. I think that's really important. During the early years of their marriage, she really tried to support him. Like I said, she was down with the customs. She understood her role. She really wanted to be what her mother had put her on this pedestal, what her mother had done all this work. She really wanted to come to the party.
Isn't that rough? I mean, for both of
Yeah.
them on a human level, that their interpersonal relationships, the most intimate relationships in their lives, are duty bound, and even down to their actual sex life. It's like you have to, whether you fancy each other or not, you just got to get on with it. Ew, it's terrible. No
Yeah, and
wonder
from
they were
Peter's,
frustrated and disappointed.
absolutely. And from little Peter's point of view, when he was just 14, his closest relative, who was his aunt, became the Empress of Russia. She whisked Peter off then from everything he knew. She gave him a Russian name. She inducted him into the Russian Orthodox faith and proclaimed him as heir to the throne. And so, and this happened all when he was in those really formative years.
Yeah.
And because of that experience, he hated Russia. He hated living in Russia,
Oh,
the Russia
God.
people. But
Yeah.
from his point of view, he's just been plucked and dropped, which is, you know, quite traumatic for a 14-year-old to go through.
Yes, indeed.
So
Yeah.
from that point of view, you can kind of see where Peter's coming from. But also from Catherine's point of view, she's like, I'm trying really hard. I'm stepping up here. Where are you? And also that doesn't justify the fact that you then slag off the people you're leading.
Yeah. So
Hating
he's
Russia.
just resentful and bitter.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you can see this isn't just hearsay and memoirs. There's actual terms of what he did. So when he became in power, he withdrew Russia from a war, even though they were winning it. He then plucked them out of that war and then started a war with Denmark, which no one was behind politically. He tried to force the Russian Orthodox Church to adopt Lutheran religious practice because that's what he had been brought up here with. And he was only on the throne for 6 months, right? And in these 6 months,
wow,
yeah, he turned Russia against him in those 6 months. He was hated.
he
He was
got
not
a lot
respected.
done.
Yeah, and it was because he favoured his native land, which was Germany, right? And he was just trying to push this German way onto everyone.
He's like, you've taken me out of Germany, so I'm going to make
this happen to
Germany.
Yeah.
I'm king now. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a little bit of that and a little bit of like trying to push Russia into the ground as well, because to him, it was this huge part of his life that he hated. So you can see he wasn't very popular.
Yeah, I get it.
Then in 1762, exactly what you said earlier, like Peter's going off on one, right? He's spiraling, he's causing havoc, burning fires, burning the whole place down. And Catherine starts to suspect that because they're not getting on very well, that she suspects Peter will divorce her, right? Which is exactly what you're saying. She could drop at a hat.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, she is known to be the opposite of Peter. So in contrast to his immaturity, she is known as clear-headed. She is known as ambitious. She's known as intelligent. She's really flexible in her character because she swanned on over to Russia and then became part of Russia. And because of all this, liked her. They could differentiate between Peter and Catherine, which I'm not sure that would happen today. But that's
really good, isn't it? Yeah, that's an interesting observation too.
She must have had some charm, right? Yeah. And she was energetic and bubbly and all those things from her childhood that we referenced earlier. The other thing she was happy to do was call Peter out on his shitty behaviour, basically. And also, I guess from her point of view, he's embarrassing. She's just sat there cringing while he goes out.
Yeah, like, this is not me. No,
so sorry.
I don't have any. But how, I mean, first of all, like, how brave. And second of all, how shrewd to kind of recognize, right, I'm meant to be married to this dude. It's not working. He's got complete power over my life. So my last salvo, my Hail Mary, is to court the people directly that he is alienating. Like, that's really risky for her to have taken that on.
Yeah. And also, this probably came from her mother, right? Who we know is relentless, who we know has instilled this sense of duty in her, who is a little puppeteer in the background. She's probably got some of those skills from Joanna, right? Because she did all that amazing hard work, which is really why I want to reference her throughout this story as well. So I do think it's unlikely that Catherine would have been a bystander 100% of what's happening. Like you said, she's probably stood there in the background cringing, but I think she had more about her to just not let dogs lie. You know, she could, but at this point as well, she probably cares about her people and cares about her country and probably, you know, wants to. Why wouldn't you want to be successful? So I don't imagine that she would be a bystander if there was something going on to dethrone Peter. But there's nothing in history to suggest that she was part of the dethroning process that happens next. So,
oh, okay. So she's pumping the brakes on his worst ideas, but she's not actively trying to unseat him.
apparently, I find that hard to believe, but apparently, okay. So there is a coup to unseat Peter, and part of that dethroning is to put her in as Empress. So
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
And just as testament to how crap Peter was, several groups started plotting against him. So it wasn't just like a couple of rebels, it's like really organized groups. And many want for Catherine to become Empress Regent, which is the proper title. One of Catherine's most prominent supporters was her lover. Oh, we haven't really spoken about her lovers. So, you know, I said earlier that they didn't really consummate the marriage, and that is understandable. Children arrived. So there was 3 children who
mysterious.
And essentially, I think the story is she wasn't getting it at home. So, and she's in a powerful position. So it'd be quite easy, I imagine, to, you know, flirt and get what you need from elsewhere.
Yeah, there's like House of the Dragon vibes here because I don't know if you've watched that, but there's a storyline that's basically cut and paste from her life by the sounds of it. And in that, one of the angles that is explored is that it actually benefits the king because there's the impression of fertility, providing heirs, and so on, when he is actually not interested. So he's like, yeah, what, do whatever. As you know, now we've got princes. Amazing. So maybe there's like, he was just like, turn in a blind eye, do what you want.
Yeah, maybe. Or I don't know. I wasn't there. But I was
disappointing.
Thinking, damn it. I was also thinking that maybe that was one of the reasons he was plotting to drop her and divorce her. I don't know.
Yeah. So, okay. Fair.
But then I don't know. But anyway, so she has lovers, which, you know, good for her. If she's been treated that badly, that makes sense. One of her lovers was Grigory Orlov, who was a Russian Guard officer, and he was part of a big family who all had really high up places in the Russian army. So good. Great networking.
Networking. Is that what we're calling it?
That's what we're calling it today. The Russian officers plot to stage a coup, and 8 days after this coup is successful, it was quite easy to dethrone him by all accounts. Her husband, Peter, was then assassinated. So there's no chance of him coming back.
Taking a dark turn. But he really pissed people off. But, you know.
I think it was more the only way to really cement it, unfortunately, was to kill him. He was most likely killed by Grigory's brother, Alexei. Contrary to quite dark rumours, Catherine, like I said, there's no evidence that Catherine was responsible for the killing. But what this all means is Catherine is now in a position where she is ruling Russia. We're now in 1762. She has a lovely coronation on the 22nd of September 1762 in the Assumption Cathedral in Moscow. She has a crown made for her coronation, and it becomes the crown that is used for every sovereign from that point forward. I just want to talk about the crown because it's beautiful, and
I'd love to hear it. Tell me.
I was like, yeah, I'll talk about this.
I've been looking at Met Gala dresses all week, so bring it on. I'm loving it.
So yeah, this is Met Gala on steroids. So you've got 75 pearls, a diamond cross, a ruby, 4,936 Indian diamonds, and gold and silver half spheres representing the Eastern and Western Russian empires. Wow. I've got a picture of the crown there.
Holy shit.
It's
It's the
magnificent.
subtlety that you appreciate, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is remarkable.
It was designed by Jeremy Pausy, who was a Swiss French court diamond jeweler, and
Wow.
it's just stunning. So yes, we'll share that on Instagram as well because I really like it. Just for
Gorgeous.
my
I
own
mean,
benefit.
obviously, it, just exquisite.
Mhm. And they just whipped that up just for the coronation quickly.
Just like, yeah,
1762.
I've had a thought. How about? There it is.
So Catherine is in a huge position of power. Joanna is beside herself with excitement. I'm sure she wet herself. Absolutely. She's giddy.
Look at that crown on my daughter.
She's like,
I did that.
This is when really for Catherine the serious work starts, right? This is when all that prep that she's done and all that learning and all that being at one with the Russian culture, she's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. And my God, her reign is so, it makes me kind of, in a weird way, yearn for this kind of ruling. It's really transformative. Well, let's talk through it. Essentially, part of Catherine's ruling was the idea of Enlightenment ideals. Do you know anything about the Enlightenment kind of era?
Nothing to hang my hat on, so I'm looking forward to hearing
me
it.
neither. So it turns out Enlightenment is a like a philosophical movement, and it was really prominent in Europe during the 18th century. So exactly where we are. It's a theory, it's a philosophy. There's two kind of strands to it. The first is radical enlightenment, which is all about democracy, it's about liberty, it's about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and eradication of religious authority. So really strong, like
Wow.
heavy
Okay.
stuff, right? For particularly for a country that hasn't experienced those things. And then the second strand is a lot more, it's like a toned down version of that. It's like, we're just going to remove the bass. So it's more moderate, kind of finding a balance between reform and the traditional system. So it has the same ideals of democracy and free speech, but is a little bit softer in its approach. So this is what is underpinning Catherine's reign, right? And this is from her education, it's from her learning. She also listened to people. She would pull in experts. She'd be like, I'm not the expert on this. You tell me, you teach me. And it was coming from a real place of discovery. Why don't we all do that? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. She did many other things. So she expanded the empire's borders, which is always a sign of a very good leader. She spearheaded judicial and administrative forums. So this is basically things like setting up a justice system, setting up a finance system, and, really kind of dragging the country right up to modern day, right? The way she does this is using a document called the Statute for the Administration of the Provinces of the Russian Empire. Whew. She publishes that document. It's a living, breathing document, as we would say in the world. And it's basically, well, I've got a little quote that I was hoping you could read just to explain what that document does.
The statute set out instructions on the general care and well-being of the Russian people, with boards of social welfare formed under the governor in each provincial capital. The Social Welfare Board oversaw hospitals, workhouses, almshouses, and the House of Correction.
So social welfare.
Very modern. Yeah, like
big deal.
Or we all have a consistent approach. This is what it's going to be. It's been advised by experts and worked on in collaboration, and we will revise it if something better comes along. How progressive, how modern.
How progressive, so cool. Also progressive, she dabbled in vaccinations. She kind of was an advocate of that. And she also was really fond of the arts. So she created a vast art collection that formed a museum, one of the greatest museums in terms of volume. And on top of all that, she wrote children's stories. She was like, think of the children.
Which is really nothing she cannot do. Jesus.
And education and children very much at the forefront of what she was doing as a leader. So she believed that all Russian children should be getting a European style education. And she was also passionate about equality in education. So not only were the boys taught, the girls were taught too.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. She appointed Ivan Beskol as her educational advisor, again, pulling in that He advised her that you should probably set up a commission, and she did that. She met with other educational pioneers, so it was like a good variety of thought. So the educational system was one of her biggest reforms, basically. It was really transformative. There's just a tiny little quote there about it, if you could read that, please.
The Russian Statute of National Education established a two-tier system of primary and high schools, free for children of all classes, except serfs.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Where's this story heading now?
Yeah.
So the first part of that quote, brilliant. Two-tier system. So, the higher you get, the more complex your education gets. It's free for children of all classes. Brilliant. Final two words. Except serfs. So serfs are basically Russia's slave system, right? And it was something that Catherine inherited. She didn't set out to make a slave system. It's just something that was happening in Russia at that time. Now, she didn't stop the slave system. It's really important to know that she wasn't an abolitionist, but she did make reforms to the system. So, we can't sit here and be like, she was the best thing ever, because she could have done more in this field, but she did make reforms in that field. She prohibited former serfs or slaves from becoming serfs again. So once you were out, you were out. And she set up a lot of formal bureaucracies, which meant that freedom was much easier to come by and much easier to apply for. So she kind of shook the system up, I guess, in that way. She also allowed slaves to make complaints against their landowners. And on the face of that, you think, oh, that's really good. That's brilliant. But what that really was a little bit naughty, because, okay, there's a complaints process for you. What that does is stop them from revolting and stop them from uprising.
Oh, so it's kind of like in a bad workplace where they're like, oh, yeah, we have a procedure for that with HR. And then it just vanishes into room 101. And basically, it's like, we've dealt with that due to process. Blah, blah, blah.
I tick that box.
Done. Yeah. Ew.
And she didn't want rebellions and she didn't want revolt. She was living in such a turbulent time and doing so much reform that rebellions were very much part of the course, really. And it was something that I think was probably one of her biggest challenges as a leader. And there was a rebellion in 1773 to 1775, but this was quashed along with so many more. I think there was 12 rebellions over her 30 plus year reign.
That's like one almost every 2-3 years, right? Like that's
exhausting.
A lot of rebellion.
And also, I guess that leads into the question that was everybody on board with the Enlightenment? Probably not.
Dragging people kicking and screaming out of their comfort zone,
isn't it? I guess, yeah.
Still too many rebellions.
So many rebellions, but she held power throughout them all. She was very in control, very firm, and she also was desperate for peace and diplomacy under her rule. So that was, like I said, one of the pillars of Enlightenment at the top. That was something she really wanted. And actually, on a political international stage, Russia became known as an international mediator. So there were some wars that Russia was mediating. So the War of Bavarian Succession, which was between Prussia and Austria, for example. And she also established the League of Armed Neutrality in 1780, which she was protecting the neutral interests from the British Royal Navy during the American Revolution. Right, so she was very key.
Yeah, kind of like a proto-NATO. Like she's out there.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Seen to be the reliable, steady hand, like clear head. Mm-hmm. That's very cool.
And if you compare that to what Peter III was doing, which was just throwing his toys out the pram and
bouncing around,
dragging people into wars that they didn't need to be involved in.
Yeah.
Completely different, completely the other way around. And it just shows that she had those skills. She had those leadership and those world-changing skills within her, and she was steadfast in that, which was really. And again, this is all stuff that you don't think about when you think about Catherine the Great. You don't think about any of this. It was really fascinating. And then on top of all that, she was often known for her grace and kindness and dignity. Something else Peter didn't do. It's fascinating. And I'm not saying she's perfect, because we've got the slavery, and her love life was known for ridicule and, many lovers. But I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying at the time it was seen as scandalous. And she was also known to be egotistical, quite vain, pretentious, domineering, all those things which I imagine come with power. They're very things that you could describe some of the world leaders today as. So to me, she was on par. Like,
It does. There's a shadow side that comes with a thirst for power and an aptitude for power. And I'm also feeling like I'm hearing echoes of Joanna there. Like the apple does not fall far from the tree, maybe.
Absolutely, Joanna. And she brought her daughter up to want more and want better and be the best. And you are going to be egotistical, vain, and pretentious off the back of that. And also, I think no matter what realm you're in, because even all those words make me think of Walt Disney as well. Like he had this facade of Walt Disney, the character that we know, world's happiest place, or whatever it is. But on the flip side, he was a ruthless leader, and he was cutthroat. And that is, it's the ebb and flow, I guess, of leading sometimes. So she did a lot. Catherine, she was very busy.
She really did.
She died at the age of 67 on the 17th of November, 1796, after suffering what is thought to be a stroke. But she has an outstanding legacy. She's known as Catherine the Great, and that endures to this day. Perhaps most impressively, she wielded power for 3 decades, despite those uprisings, and despite that she didn't really have any claim to the throne. She wasn't born into the throne. She married into the throne and then killed the person who should have been on the throne.
My client.
Allegedly killed. Sorry about that. Yeah, and to me, you don't get that by sheer luck. You get that through hard work and determination. She did, like you said, dragged Russia into the modern world, kicking and screaming. And she did largely succeed in doing that. And she got children loads of education because of that. She got a justice system because of that. There's so many things that she did that have been forgotten. And sadly, the average person on the street is more likely to know her for the urban myth that she died having sex on a horse. So while the myths may linger, remember this: Catherine the Great was a force of intellect and will. She seized her power. She understood what she needed. She absolutely modernized the nation at that time and engaged with the greatest minds that she could find. Her true legacy lies not in sensational stories, but in her profound and lasting transformation of Russia.
Well, thank you so much. I was one of the ignorant, benighted people who only knew the sleaze. Yeah. Isn't it just typical that a way to undermine a woman of accomplishment and power is to say something smutty about her, Yeah, that's like slut shaming, despite the fact that she was changing things and we all hate change. She was still in power for 3 decades in a time of constant turmoil and uprising. Yeah. That speaks volumes, because clearly from what happened to her little Peter, they would depose a bitch. If they did not like, if the people did not like it, that person's gone. So clearly, despite doing things that people would have found uncomfortable, she was benefiting the nation.
Yeah. No, I like her.
And an amazing crown. Yay! What's not to love?
On top of everything else. Super duper.
Thank you for listening to this episode of She Changed History. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Find us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you've got any ideas of women you'd like us to cover in a future episode, please comment on the socials or email us at shechangedhistory@gmail.com. Catch you next time.